Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the CATA Secondary School Podcast. I'm your host, CJ Rosenborough. In today's episode, we're discussing athletes and coaches and parents' reactions to injuries, and we're excited to have Ashley and Katie joining us to share their insights and experiences. But before we jump into the conversation, let's quickly break down what we'll be covering in today's episode. So we'll be going over 3 sections. The first section is discussing the appropriate reaction to an injury versus automatic reactions, and some complications that come with those. Section 2 will be psychological responses to different phases of recovery, even for short injuries or for longer injuries. And Section 3 will be coping and how coaches, parents, and athletic trainers can help throughout that process. So, jumping into Section 1, appropriate reactions to injury. Why do we care? Why is it a big deal that there's an appropriate response, whether it's from coach, parent, or most importantly, athlete, to that injury?
I think it's really important because it sets up the psychological tone of the injury right there from second one, day one. You want to try to mitigate the athlete's reaction and help guide any parent and coach reactions, just to do a holistic view of the athlete's psychological well-being. But if you get in there quick and you set the tone, it definitely helps for the long term.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just a really traumatic event a lot of the time. And if you respond poorly or someone else responds poorly, it sets them down this negative spiral that is really hard to climb back out of. To be like, no, you're going to be okay. This has happened to other people and they have recovered fully from it. You're going to be okay. But if someone has that immediate negative response to it, the negativity that just builds and builds there is really hard to overcome.
Yeah. I think you get a big clue from the very beginning how an injury is going to go. If it's going to be an easy one, if it's going to be kind of a challenging one. And that athlete's state of mind really shows in that first 2 minutes when they might be freaking out and you can't get them to calm down because they stubbed their toe and you're like, this is not a normal reaction to this injury. Or you'll have somebody who just tore their ACL and they're laughing and crying. You're like, okay, they're going to be fine. This is going to be a fun rehab. So I think it tells you a lot about the state of where that athlete is. Katie.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add to that. It also helps like diagnostically if you have an athlete who's like full panic mode and screaming and you're like, hey, no, you actually didn't do any of the things that are going on in your brain. It's just a bruise, and all of a sudden they're calm and fine. But if someone else gets there first and was like, oh yeah, I've heard of this before, you tore your ACL, and then like, how do you convince them otherwise? Like you're like, all right, well, now you're spending X, Y, and Z dollars because now you gotta go get an MRI and doctor's appointments, all for them to say you have a bruise. But someone who has seen it on TV decided that that's what it must be.
Yeah, and that's huge. The parents a lot of times can give you a massive hint as to what this is going to be like. And a lot of athletic trainers, and I understand why they do this because confrontation is not a fun part of our job, and usually it gets to be significant. But a lot of athletic trainers don't communicate with the parents a lot. I've gotten in the habit of anytime there's any kind of restriction or could be restriction, I always just shoot parents a call. I'm like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's my thought process. And 95% of the time, it's awesome. Thank you. But if you have those kids on the field who get hurt and then the parents all of a sudden by your side, even though it's a restricted area and they're not supposed to be on the field, and then they're like panicking or they're like, he's fine, get up. You're like, okay, that's how this is going to go. So it gives you an idea of, I need to be this way and I need to communicate this way versus I might downplay some parts of it, or I might not throw out the word, hey, ACL. If they're freaking out, I might be like, hey, no, we don't have a lot of range of motion right now. There's some instability. We're going to get it looked at. Here's the next steps. Or if they're like, they're fine, get up. I'm going to hit that a little bit hard. Hey, I'm concerned that there might be this. I don't want their ACL to tear. So it's going to change how I speak very drastically. I think that's kind of your first big indicator. So that reaction, we should care a lot because it's going to tell us a lot going forward. There was a study by Nippert et al. I think it was 2013 or 2022. One of the two. Not very close to each other.
Those are very different dates.
They're very different. But it's Nippert et al. And they found that personality, history of stressors, and life event stress can influence injury occurrence. So increase that injury occurrence. And then after an injury, those same factors, as well as athletic identity, self-esteem, and significant others, such as your parents, coaches, and teammates, can affect injury response, recovery, and subsequent sports performance. So looking at the athlete, how they react is important, but also seeing how the parents, coaches, and teammates react is also very important to injury response, recovery, and subsequent sports performance, which I found interesting and ties into like recovery is going to affect sports performance. But I have a fun story about teammates a little bit later on that I want to share because it made a nightmare situation because the teammates were responding a certain way. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But a lot of times when this happens, we're not there initially. I know a lot of athletic trainers like I stand there and watch practice. We're not going to be there for every injury. We're not going to have eyes on exactly where and when an injury happens. So a lot of times the teammates, parents, or coaches are the first ones who are there for an injury. So Ashley, what's some best advice that you typically give to teammates, parents, or coaches, if you have this conversation at all, about what to do when an injury happens?
That conversation usually happens when the injury happens. And one of my most common responses is, "Oh my God, my parents are going to kill me." And the athlete gets so worked up because they're worried their parents are going to be so mad at them. So I'll try to get the parents involved, whether it's calling them on the phone and I'm like, "Hey, this is Ashley. I'm here with your kid. He hurt his knee, whatever. He's doing okay, but he's really worried that you're going to be so mad at him. And I really need you to tell him he's not in trouble for getting hurt." And they kind of get it. And they're like, "Okay, I need to calm him down." So I try to do it in that way. For the most part, I think I've never really had a problem with my coaches, at least. For that initial reaction, usually coaches are right there and they're like, "Hey man, take it easy, listen to the athletic trainer and do what they say. You'll be fine, man. It's okay." So usually the coaches are pretty good. And then yeah, you definitely get the family members who come in and sometimes they're freaking out. Um, and a couple of them just think they're medical professionals and try to take over and give advice. And there's been a few times where I've had to get pretty testy and raise my voice and be like, "Hey, let's let the trained medical professional handle this. And if you don't have medical training, I need you to step back right now." And then I deal with the injury. And then once kind of things have kind of calmed down, wrapped up there, I try to go back to that person and be like, "Hey, like, sorry if you think I yelled at you. This is what was happening and I really needed to get things under control. I hope you don't like take that personally." But like for one of them, my most recently in football, I had a kid tear his hamstring and it was a pretty good tear during a game. And their family member, jumped to the fence and came over immediately and he's like, "Just stretch it out, just stretch it out." And I was like, "No, no, no, no." Like, we don't stretch out fresh tears. Like, stop it. And so I had to kind of yell at him and get him off the sideline. But then I reapproached him afterwards and I was like, "Hey man, I'm so sorry, but like he tore his hamstring and you were telling him to stretch it and that's super bad. So I hope you realize that's why I was trying to like tell you to stop." And he understood and I think things were fine after that. But so that's kind of my experience with those things. But yeah, what about you guys?
Yeah, I've run the gambit with these ones. I think I text CJ and was like, "Hey, we should cover this." Because the most recent one was a parent. I need you to know this kid actively walked himself off to the sideline, stood by the bench to sub himself off. Like he knew what happened. He was fine. Nothing major occurred. There was a mom from across the gym screaming, "He's hurt, he's hurt, he's hurt." I need you to know it was a not even swollen ankle, followed by the coach screaming at me as I was right there. He was at the sub bench. I met him there, screaming at me, "Don't take his shoe off. Don't take his shoe off." And I was like, "Sir, how long have you coached this sport? We have eventually the shoe has to come off. Like, I don't like I need you to take a breath." But so I think my biggest thing is and I don't hate it, but like everything we have, right? Every EAP, every CPR course, everything. The first thing it says is remain calm. And there is no recommendations on what that means because there's not a single person except for the athletic trainer who remains calm. And oh my gosh, what does that mean to other people? Because It does not help. Like, my biggest advice, and I did before I switched schools, start talking at player meetings about being like, you guys, if your teammate is hurt, stop asking if they're okay. Stop asking if they're okay. Stop asking what's wrong. Stop asking what they did. Because we don't know any of that information and they don't need to be asked it 50 times in a row. Because the last thing they want to do is keep saying, I don't know, it just hurts. I don't know, it just hurts. And they do that spiral, and I looked at a coach the other day who it was wrestling. He start, man, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine. You'll be wrestling by next week. And I'm like, okay, maybe too positive here. Like, take the positivity back down a notch, because I know for certain that he just tore his ACL from the mechanism and what I'm feeling. But I was not about to tell that to him with the state he was currently in. And then followed by, you're going to be wrestling next week. What do you think he did? No, 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 no. I'm not an MRI. I don't, until we get further imaging, I'm not sure what's going on. I do know he needs to see a doctor soon. Like, there are times where you got to tell him. There are times you don't got to tell him. And that was a time not to tell. I was not his athletic trainer. I had just met him on the minute he got injured. I did not need to give him that devastating information because he was already in a state of, my career is over. I'm never going to wrestle again. I do all of this. He was going down the rabbit hole without even having started. And he didn't need that information. He had already come to that determination himself.
That information is not going to change.
Yeah, but to tell him you'll be fine by next week is also not the response you need. And so now instead, I've started, as soon as you've gotten through the process, I'm getting him on crutches, we're getting all this stuff, I go, okay, prepare yourself. Everyone is going to ask if you're okay. And physically, yes, you're okay. Like, mentally, not okay. Injury, not okay. But overall, you are going to be okay. It's just not right this second. So we're going to get you through it. You're not going to the hospital, and we'll proceed to the next steps.
I do love that when everyone's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, they're okay. Like, they're not gonna die."
Right. Well, and so my other advice: no stories. Nobody needs stories. Nobody needs. I saw this before. I saw this before. That's an ACL. I saw this before. That's an Achilles. I've seen. I physically picked a girls basketball player up off the court. Like, she was, 120 pounds maybe, and she dislocated her kneecap.
Hey, let's not gloss over that. That's still a pretty good lift, Katie.
Well, she was small. My point is, she was small. But she had dislocated her kneecap. I reduced it immediately. There was a lot of screaming, a lot of guarding. There was no point in doing any further tests. So I walked her off the court, got her to the bench. Girls basketball, girls sports, probably worse than boys sports, but like the whole team surrounded us. And I think I heard 3 different, I've dislocated my kneecap 17 times was one thing I heard. And I was like, nope, we're not going there. And then mom and dad are down there, right? Because there was screaming. And so like mom and dad are already at the bench with me. And by story number 3, I was like, we gotta go to the athletic training room. We got to get out of here. And so I picked her up and just walked her off the court and went to the training room. And her mom came with me, and dad went up to get the rest of their stuff. And I went into the athletic training room, locked the door, and was like, nope, nobody else comes in right now. We have to go through this whole process. So we did. Well, then I think her sister was there, and her sister let her dad in. Her dad walks in and he goes, you weren't kidding. It took me 10 minutes to get back in here because of the amount of people who stopped him to tell him their story about how she was going to be okay. And I was like, and by the end of the night, because it was like an afternoon game or something, I think her dad or maybe her mom texted me and was like, Katie, thank you so much for setting up everything for us. Cause team physician did all the steps, was like, okay, you have an appointment this day at this time. You're going to do X, Y, and Z. Until then, don't listen to what everybody else says. And by the end of the night, whichever parent texted me, they were like, holy cow. Thank you for doing everything for us, because everyone has an opinion and wants to give advice, and we are swamped with what we do next, and we're so happy to just know what we should be doing.
So a couple things on that. It was funny. I could tell the exact state of where Katie was at based on the text that I got for this episode. It's just, we need to do an episode on athlete reaction. I was like, oh boy, there's a story associated with this. Something just went wrong. So I was just like laughing to myself because I could just tell you were in the middle of dealing with something.
Don't take the shoe off situation.
Yeah. You're probably like, here's somebody still in the middle of it. Text CJ, we need to get this on.
100%.
So funny. But yeah, the way I kind of look at it is they're going to get all this information. They're going to know 100% of the information about their injury. That doesn't need to come all at once. And some people can handle it. Some people want to know because not knowing is worse than knowing. And you kind of got to read the athlete and see like, okay, this kid can handle it. This kid is not in an emotional state to handle it. They need to kind of chill out, just understand they're injured. That's a lot to take in right off the bat. I mean, we're all in Denver. We saw Jokic go down, and just him being injured, clutching his knee, is a shock to the system because it's something we've never seen before. He's the franchise. We don't need to know what happened right there. We just need to come to terms with, okay, he's injured. He's probably going to be out for a little bit. All right, let's figure out what the diagnosis is. Like, it would hit so much harder if it's like, oh, we knew, oh, they think it's an ACL. Oh my gosh, he's injured and ACL. What is next year? And it's so much coming down on you. You don't need to know it all immediately. It's not going to change anything. So I agree 100%, though. It's funny how everyone stops you and gives you their opinion, and you're like, okay. Because from our point of view, we're like, yeah, we've seen this. And then everyone's like, are they okay? And that's my exact thought process, Ashley. I'm like, yeah, they're okay. I'm like, oh, so not injured? I'm like, I didn't say that. They're going to live, but I can't. And then if they keep on pushing, I'm like, dude, I can't tell you any information. Stop asking. But yeah, I was like, yeah, they're fine. They just got stretched off in ambulance. Yeah, they're right.
Yeah, no, that's so funny. How do you guys have any like good phrases or particular ways in which you handle other medical professionals stepping in where they don't belong? Because they're usually wrong also.
Yeah, you get the classic, like somebody who's way outside their scope, but tangentially adjacent to medical, like they're a brace supplier that sometimes talks to doctors, which are sometimes an orthopedic doctor or an orthopedic nurse who works with an orthopedic. And it's like, we're like 5 degrees separation now. Those are kind of challenging. Katie?
So usually I ask what, like, oh, who are you? Right? Because usually it's the emergency situation where everyone is stepping in. And I've for sure had a really negative interaction in that situation. I had a cardiologist once tell me that I should have stabilized, and I was like, it's a dislocated shoulder. We don't usually stabilize those on the court. It was not, yeah. But I've also, like, when you ask what they do, and then I go, okay, well, I'm actually here working. This is my job to do this. So do you mind if I just do that? And usually they go, oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't know. I've also, in those like intense emergency situations, like the most recent one, wrestling, came running one gym to another, whatever. It's always someone in the stands, right? And so grandma and grandpa fell, and oh my gosh, what's happening? Da, da, da. And you get there, and there's a firefighter and a nurse and another nurse, and what type of nurse are you? And you get there, and our school administration had actually gotten really good about being like, oh, this is our on-site personnel. They're going to handle it from here. So that was really nice. I also, like, full emergency event, it was catastrophic, and a coach actually got in someone's face who was like, I think you should. And she turned around and was like, not the medical professional being paid to be here, go away. And I was like, oh,
I love it.
I was like, that was turns out she was friends with that person, and I was like, oh, okay. And like both sides like apologized later, and I was like, no, I appreciate it, I get it. Please don't ever tell me you don't think I should be doing what I'm doing ever again, because she was not an emergency medicine professional in any way. And I was like, you actually were going to make that situation way worse. Please don't step in again. And she was like, oh, well, and I was like, no, I get it. But like, in the future, this is why we do things. There is a protocol. And she was like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, I know. Thank you.
I mean, if you're in the medical field, you should know that there's a
Exactly.
protocol. I don't
Yeah.
But if you're
understand
not in
that.
emergency medicine, you don't know.
Oh,
Right?
well,
How often
Yeah,
is
that's
a
true.
a clinical professional who doesn't, like, they have appointments scheduled. Their person comes in for a specific appointment. They know what the appointment is. They know all the details ahead of time. The chances of a catastrophic event are pretty small in their realm. So they haven't thought about it in a really long time.
That's a good point. I was
Yeah.
think back to like everyone's CPR certified, and this
Sure.
is not new information on CPR. It's
Sure, but think about like a heat illness, and if they're unconscious and they're not, this person had not checked a pulse, but she was sure she didn't have one, and I was like, cool. Even without her pulse, she still has to go in the ice bath. Like, we can't shock her heart back if she's still overheated. Like, there are steps here, and she did in fact have a pulse, so she needed to go in the ice bath. Like, it was a full heat stroke event, but she wanted us to start compressions, and I was like, we can in from the ice bath, but currently we need her in the ice bath.
Yeah, I had an emergency room nurse most recently responding. She came in with the parent because the parent was at a booster club meeting or something down the hall. And so they just happened to be there, but this girl, she just sprained her ankle, but she was screaming bloody murder. Now, she was fine. Like, there was no swelling, there was no deformity. She was just kind of being a baby. And so I was trying to calm her down, and I was trying to get her mom to help me calm her down. And then this other lady comes in, and I have no idea who she is. And she's like, we need to get her to the hospital immediately. We got to order, they have to do on site MRIs. And I was like, what? They do that? I was like, that's cool. I've never had an emergency MRI for an ankle sprain before, but cool.
Yeah.
Like, but I was like, really? It's just an ankle sprain. Like, she's fine. And the nurse kind of fought with me, and I was like, I'm sorry, wait, what are you? And so she told me, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I was like, I don't know how it works where you work, but she's fine. She doesn't need that. I was like, she doesn't even need to go to the doctor tonight. Like, I'm going to put her in a boot and give her some crutches. She's good.
I always think back to, this is coming from a positive place. They want to help, right? And that's also coming from a little bit of an ego place. So if I'm in this field, I can help. I have experience, but like they need my help type of thing. And it's hard to trust. I mean, I know when I'm at a sporting event and somebody goes down, like if I'm on a sideline and just watching one of my friends' kids play, which the fact that I'm at an age now where my friends' kids are playing sports is really depressing. But I'm like, oh, I'm an athlete trainer. This is granted, it is my wheelhouse, but I'm still like, no, I need to stay back. I'm not being paid to be here. I'm a spectator. But when you have those people come out, and the worst is when they start contradicting you. And recently I had a parent come in who, it wasn't even a parent of the athlete. It was a parent of one of the other teammates. And I'm like trying to do, and she's cutting me off. Like, while I'm asking questions, I had to like kind of get, ma'am, like, I need you to kind of step back. I understand you're trying to help, but I need to do my job and do an evaluation here. But I think like what Katie has, having your school on board with like, hey, this is part of our process, or even put in the AP, like, hey, if we have an issue, either security, admin, or coaches, like, I need you guys to help me with troublesome parents or whoever that person might be. When we're in the middle of it, we shouldn't have to be thinking about, how do I have this discussion? It should be coming from the school. But quick story about what time an athlete negatively reacted on my end, which is, it was kind of funny. It was in the summer, and it was a soccer tournament, a pretty big one. So there were kids from all over the nation, and it was hot, and I want to say we had just had a wildfire. So there's smoke in the air. We were post-COVID. It's hot. There's just a lot of respiratory issues going on. So this team came in, and this kid had been sick previously. He was over it, but so like a fourth issue there. And he starts having some issues with the heat and like kind of a little bit trouble breathing, nothing major. And I'm like, okay, like, it sounds like you're kind of overheating a little bit. So we check vitals. I get him some ice towels, put him under. I'm like, he's nowhere near needing an ice bath at this point, but we should cool him down, monitor, and then if he starts to show symptoms, we're going to dunk him. And he stabilizes, but then he's like kind of breathing a little bit heavier. I'm like, okay. And he's been down on the ground for like, feet elevated in the shade for about 3-4 minutes at this point. And I guess it was halftime of the game. The game just ended. And his entire team came over and started crowding. And the team mom, because his guardian wasn't there, she's like, should we do this? Should we do this? I'm like, we need a monitor. He's okay right now. He's stable. Like, it's okay. And then the team all started like crying and like screaming. I'm like, can we go somewhere else? This is not helpful. And then somebody, like, he must have said something to somebody when I was reaching for something else. Somebody brings his phone with his mom on the phone, and he starts giving like the farewell death call. He's like, I'm so sorry I wasn't a good kid. Like, I don't think I'm gonna make it. I'm like, who gave him a phone? Stop it.
I'm not gonna make it.
He's talking to his mom across the country. I'm like, what is happening right now? So I like look at the other mom, like, we need to stop this, like, because he's starting to ramp up. He's responding to his teammates' reactions. He's now giving his mom's farewell call. I'm like, he's okay, but he's so in his head that he's starting to I'm starting to worry about him going into shock. Like, I'm not even worried about the heat anymore. He's like, my face is getting tingly, my hands start. I'm like, yeah, you're hyperventilating. You're starting to contract. So I called over the lead AT for the event. I'm like, hey, he's stable. I'm like, he's still overheated. Like, I'd like to keep him cooled out, but he's starting to deteriorate and he's not getting better. I'm like, we got to call EMS. And this is maybe like 7 minutes in now. This all happened pretty quick. So she's like, okay, yeah, we're going to call. So we call the radio, and then we wait for like 10 minutes for EMS to get there. And then one of the parents from the stands walks over, was like, you should have called him as soon as you knew you needed him. And I just looked at him like, I did. They have to drive here.
I have the exact opposite of that, as well, not kid reactions, but parent reaction, because they just happen to be right there. And cross country is like my downfall, man. Things happen all the time. But I had a girl, she was like hyperventilating, and nothing we said could get her. Like, she just, and like, kids were around, we sent the kids away because they weren't helping, they were amping her up. And finally I looked across over the top of her at her parents, and I was like, she's gonna pass out, then she's gonna be fine. And her breathing got worse, and her mom goes, yeah, I think that's the best case scenario here. And I was like,
she needs a nap.
Great. I was like, as long as we all know that that's what's coming, we're gonna be fine. I was like, I just think everybody, the ambulance, the paramedics were sitting outside the back of the ambulance watching this occur. And it got to a point where I was like, man, I really think she's gonna hyperventilate into herself passing out. And her mom just went like full, like, I have a toddler right now, and was like, yeah, that's fine.
She'll live.
It actually, I think once, like, her mom and I just kind of had that back and forth banter after she initially like worked herself up, I think she realized she was going to be okay because we were joking. But it was she never actually passed out. But it was when her mom responded back and was like, yeah, that's good. And I was like, okay, as long as you know, thank you.
That leads nicely into the next topic I wanted to go over is self-control during traumatic or gruesome injury responses. And they don't have to be gruesome or traumatic.
No,
well,
they do not.
Anything can be traumatic,
right?
But it doesn't have to be gruesome. I think keeping the athlete calm or calming the athlete is the number one thing. I mean, any injury can be fatal because of shock, right? Like, it can be, I stubbed my toe, oh god, and then all of a sudden it ramps up, and we're in a bad place.
Right. Have you ever had the tooth injury where someone all of a sudden is like, oh, you bit all the way through your lip, and then you can't get them to calm down ever again? Like, you're like, oh, did you have to tell him?
Yeah. I had a kid who he got a tooth through lip after hitting head to head, and he wanted to go back in the game, and I was like, dude, your lip is dangling, like there's a solid chunk like the size of my pinky dangling, and he starts telling me, oh, it's effing fine. I'm like, dude, when you just cursed, it's like it just flapped in the wind. I'm like, you need to go get it fixed. I'm like, also stop saying that because blood's kind of spraying when you do that. Like,
but
keep yourself under control.
Have you ever been so calm? Like, you call a parent and you're like, okay, I need you to come get them right now. You do need to go to the hospital. If you can't come, we will have to call an ambulance. And then they get there and don't realize how much you were like trying to keep them calm on the phone. And the parent is like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I'm like, no, no. Remember when I asked you what you wanted to do? This is why you drove here, so you could drive them yourself. But like, they were like, I did not think that you meant it was that. And I was like, okay, well, when I suggest you come get them right now, it's not usually something minor. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I found joking is super, super helpful to the athlete. It helps calm them down because it lets them know, like, okay, like what you said, Katie. She started realizing she was okay because you guys started joking about it.
right.
You got to let them come to the realization, I'm going to be okay. If the medical staff is cool, I'm cool. If you're worried, they're going to start panicking.
Right.
So I think that's a super useful.
I think that's know your athletes really well too.
Mhm.
And this phone call particularly, we have been around high schoolers for long enough. If you have been around any high school age kid long enough, you kind of know what lines to teeter. What's funny at the time, what's not funny, what stupid adult thing you can say that makes them cringe. And they're like, no, no, Katie, don't, no. And I go, oh, I had to. This is where we're at right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
But
definitely found, well, initially, sorry to interrupt you, Katie.
no,
You really got to trick their brain, and you have to stop their brain and get them out of that like
Mhm.
panic spiral. And yeah, sometimes you have to do it with the parents too, because I've had a parent pass out and we had to call a second ambulance.
Oh my gosh.
I have had to call an ambulance because the parent was like, no, I can't drive them. If I drive them, I'll pass out. Like, they're like, I just knowing they're in the car with me, I don't handle injuries. I can't. You have to have someone else drive them. I'm like, do you want another parent to drive you? Like, you want the ambulance? And they're like, nah, insurance will cover it. And I'm like, not the whole
Nice.
okay,
Okay.
that's great. Like, but I have had that where they were like, no, I can't. I can't take them myself. And I was like, oh, good for you for knowing. Thank you for recognizing that.
So I think when all this happens, because it's gonna happen, it's gonna continuously happen, and no matter what you do. Like Katie, you went into the teams and you told them, do not react this way. You're gonna always have a new batch of kids and parents coming in. That's the nature of being a secondary school athletic trainer. I think following up is super important. Address the poor reaction, address what happened, even if it's not a poor reaction. Just be like, hey, at any time you have an injury that doesn't exactly go how you want, I think you should have some sort of debriefing, usually it's with yourself. Like, how did I do on that? I could have done this better. I probably should have said this. I should say this next time. But if there's an external factor with teammates or parents or coaches, just have a follow-up conversation. Ashley, I think you articulated it really well. You're in the heat of the moment. You have to do what's best for the patient. You have to do what's best for the patient quickly, assertively, and direct. A lot of people take direct and assertive as combative, especially if you're a woman. It's not fair, but it's the truth. Following up and saying, hey, I'm sorry. Here's what happened. I'm in the middle of an emergency. I'm in the middle of an injury. I need to take care of this. Like, sorry if it came across as combative, but I needed this to happen at this time. And then figure out a way to make sure that it doesn't happen again. Or having a better, like, can I address that betterly? Can I address that better or more articulately? And try and figure it out, because it's going to keep on happening. So I think that's a huge part. Any last thoughts on section 1 before we hop on to section 2?
I think I was just going to talk about like when to tell them and not to tell them, because I've covered football, right? The doctor is there, and I've had like, listen, when I deal with an athlete every day and they look at me and they're like, what do you think it is? I have no problem telling them like, hey, we have to make sure it's not this. But I can't get a good feeling on it, so I think you should be prepared, because I don't like them to get the worst case scenario without having the thought of it being the worst case scenario in their head first. And I've for sure covered a game where the doctor was like, why did you tell them that? And I was like, what? Because they know, like, they already know something. And they're like, well, you can't confirm that without imaging. And I was like, I understand that. He was a newer doctor, like newer meaning he had just finished med school and he had finished sports medicine fellowship. Like, it's not like he has never done this before, right? But he they don't do on-field stuff all the time unless they volunteer to do that, right? And that's not his normal. Normally he's in an office and he has imaging and x-rays and all these things around him to back out what he's saying, not just his hands to feel what he's feeling. And I did the test. He did the test, confirmed what I was thinking, suggested the doctor's appointment on Monday in the office where we can order all the extra imaging. But then was like, yeah, we'll get it looked at and see what we think. And then, of course, he walked away and the kid looked at me and was like, is it? And I was like, he had a previous ACL injury on it was the other leg, right? And I was like, yeah, I mean, not 100%, but like 85% probably, like, and he's like, okay. And just, he's like, all right, can I have crutches? Like, I got to go support my team, right? And they're like, it's just one of those where like him, you have to tell him. I've also had, it was a returning ankle injury for a year out, like fracture, all this stuff. And then contact tackle tore her ACL. She went down on the sideline and everyone else thought it was her hip. And I got a Lockman mechanism. And I was like, I literally had to get up and walk away and had to come back and tell her. And so this was a bad parent reaction too, because I saw it and she goes, what do you think? And I was like, we're going to wait till halftime. I'm going to get you back on the table. I'm going to have your parents come down. We're going to look at it again and just make sure. Well, so then before halftime, I thought, okay, I'm going to go get her parents. I'm going to let them know because she's been out for a year. Oh no. Mom was in tears. Mom like didn't even make it out of the stands before she's like telling her that her world is over. And I was like, and then the athlete handled it better than mom did. And it's like, go back, go away. We don't know until we know. And I got things to do. And I was like, good for you. But like, I knew as soon as well, and then flip side, let's progress to the worst side of this parent reaction. That same athlete came back to see me the next week after having seen the doctor and goes, did I do this to myself? And I was like, I'm sorry, wait, what? You had a contact tackle in soccer that you tore your ACL doing? What are you talking about? Did you do this to myself? Oh, my parents said that I didn't rehab my ankle correctly and I had weakness, so that's why I tore it.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, that's how you have a non-contact ACL tear. You, in fact, had a full contact ACL tear.
Is that something she needs to hear?
Like, right. Is that... Well, and that's, I legit looked at her in my athletic training room and I go, do I need to call your mom? Like, would it help you if I call your mom and have this conversation with her and not you? Because I don't need to have this conversation with you. 100% you did not do this to yourself. Do you want me to call your parents? And of course, she did not want me to call her parents, but I was ready. And I went and had a talk with the coaches about that just to be like, okay, social support system 101. We don't have that conversation ever. I don't care what field you're in.
Yeah, that is a really good point because I a few times have had where the parents are super negative and they are not being the social support the athlete needs. And I immediately go to the coach and let them know what's going on. And I'm like, you and I here, we have to pick up the slack now. So like extra buttering, like we need to like help this athlete's ego and we need to help their psyche and we need to remain positive and yeah, so and usually the coaches, and when you tell a team that also like, hey, like we need to support this player, right? They're still around, they're still here showing up to practices, like we need to be positive. And usually they rally and they do pretty well. But yeah, it's very hard when you have parents with that kind of reaction because we can't tell them how to parent. Right? We can guide and try to suggest and be like, hey, I think we really need to keep things positive. But like, they're going to be who they're going to be. And yeah, that's a part of this we can't quite control, but we can be there for that athlete. And I know most athletic trainers, we are the ones that are there for them. So that's good. And shout out to all of us.
I was going to play in perfect into transitioning into our next section.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of split. I think the athletes deserve to know, and at what point they get to know is kind of the the trick. I will always err on the side of I'm going to let you know what I'm thinking because I want you to have all the information. They're young athletes transitioning to the adult life. I think it's, injuries come with not just sport concerns, but they also come with, hey, we're gonna learn and grow. I mentioned this on the last episode. The doc I was shadowing was like, hey, when we're recovering from concussions, you're not just learning how to recover from a concussion. You're learning how to advocate for yourself in school. Those are life lessons. So I think it's an important part of growing up. It's definitely shaped who I am, learning how to communicate injuries because I had a lot of them. If I can tell like this kid, I probably shouldn't tell them right now, or if it's kind of a borderline, I don't want to let them know like, I think it's probably your ACL, but I didn't get a really good feel. Like it feels like maybe a grade 1 ACL, low grade 2, like some movement, but not a lot, or it could just be a meniscus and not an ACL. I'll kind of tell them like, hey, look, if I knew what it was, then we got issues because I'm trained to find all these big things. The fact that I'm not sure means that I can't rule it out. And that's kind of the way I phrase it. I've ruled out all these things. I can't rule out this one just because I can't really get a good look at it. So we're going to get you somebody who can rule it out. I'm like, and then if they're like, they really want to know, I'm like, okay, here's worst case scenario, here's best case scenario. And we're going to rule out worst case, you're not dying. Cool. All right. Ruled that out when I walked up to you. And then we keep on going. And then they kind of understand that process and like, okay, so you ruled out all these bad things. And now we're at this one. We're going to try and rule that out. And then we're going to go to the next less bad thing, next less bad. And that kind of calms them down because they understand the process. And I'm not saying, hey, I think your ACL's torn. Let's get you to the doc, because then they're going to be like, my ACL's torn. But if I'm like, hey, I can't rule it out. There is some laxity there. We're going to get another look at it, see what's going on. There's that, there's a chance it's torn. There's a chance it's not. So they still know what I'm thinking, but I didn't give them a diagnosis. And I kind of walk them through that. I think that really helps a lot. I've gotten some really good responses to that as I walk the kids through, and just, I should be as transparent as I can. And it's funny to hear you say that about that doc, Katie, because I don't think I can confidently say I've never made a definitive diagnosis with imaging because I have no imaging. How many times do I have an ankle injury where I'm like, hey, you sprained your ankle? Oh, I didn't get an MRI of the ankle to confirm that it's sprained. There are other ways. You don't need to do the gold standard every single time. We know what we're doing. We know when there's an ACL tear. We can feel it. We're very good at that.
Yeah, I've made a point of keeping track of when I'm right versus when the sideline doctor's right. Just not it's nothing against them. They don't do sideline, right? So it's kind of a game. Which one of us is going to be right? And so I had a long-term relationship with a really great doctor. So it got to a point where like it was pretty funny for him to be like, we'll just assume your opinion until proven wrong. And then when I had a new person, right, I've had a couple of like, just out of fellowship doctors. They need the experience. They need to get it. And they like this year I had one that it was not a maybe fracture. It was, I felt it in my hand and he was certain it was not and was going to let a kid go back into the game. And I was like, you can't, you absolutely can't. I was like, I understand. We're going to send him with his mom right now. We'll get back to you on what the injury was. And I did not follow back up to be like, no, that was a fib fracture, not a high ankle sprain. I felt it move and you should have also felt it move. But again, I don't, maybe I shifted it back. That's possible. But yeah, like your on-field hands-on experience does not match my, we need x-rays on that experience.
Yeah. I think a lot of times if you're new to a sideline, you don't want to be that clinician that holds people out and super conservative. Right. So I think that's also a mental factor of.
And I think we err on the side of wanting everybody to play. We want them to be fine. We want them to go back in. Everybody, we want the positive outcome. That's part of why we went into this. You want to be like, yeah, let's get you back out there. But so sometimes you got to be the bad guy. I think being the bad guy is the experience piece of it, where we go, oh no, we're not doing this today. We have a lot more years to play. Let's take today off.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to jump into section 2. We're going over psychological responses to different phases of recovery. So we've already chatted about the initial response to the injury, how that can play into the recovery long-term. We're going to kind of dive a little bit into how it affects each phase as they go through, because injuries don't just happen once and then are done. There's going to be ups and downs, hills and valleys. So Katie has looked at some research, and it sounds like there's not a whole lot of new research out there on this.
Oh
Is
my
that
gosh.
correct?
I set my search engines. I am part of a school where I can get into the different databases and set my search engines. And I tried to set them for, 10 years recent information on this. All of it is like mental health following this,
Mhm.
mental health following this. None of it is like injury response, right? So it's like we need to promote mental health after this. And like it is similar, but it wasn't the research I was looking for. You know what I mean? Like I was like, where? And so the stuff I found was like the earliest one I think was maybe 2015, but the one of the ones I used the most, I think was 1999. And I used a lot from that. Maybe a 2002 one, maybe. But yeah, there was a lot where I was like,
When I was looking, I found a lot of the same articles you did, except for the 95 one. I did not find that one, but a couple that you used, I looked and I was like, oh, I found this one. Oh, yep, she got that one. And those were the only like 5 or 6 articles that were relevant. And some of
yeah,
them were stretching the word relevant. It's more about the mental health consideration, less about its effect on the
right.
tissue response and healing rate.
And
But
yeah, and I tried different key phrases because I was like, maybe I'm been out of the research game for a minute. Maybe I forgot how to do this. I just couldn't find anything current. I did this Clement et al. Paper was, I think it's a 2015, and it was like the one where I was like, okay, this is the one where it makes the most sense if you had to explain it to a non-athlete person. How would you explain it? And this is the one that broke it down best for me. So,
I like that.
and I liked it because athletic training it was athletic training to layperson. Athletic trainers, we have acute uh, repair, remodel. It had, injury, rehab, return to sport.
So let's break down that. All right, it looks like it had a decent spot on reaction to injury as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the reaction to the injury is like our acute phase of the injury.
Oh, okay. So that's what we kind of just went over. Okay, perfect. I do want to pull some things out that you put here regarding some of the responses they talked about because I think they're important. Just on a human level, it's kind of disappointing to hear because I've heard them, but perceived severity of the injury and time away, I think is so sad when the kids are like, how long are we gonna be out? Because they just want to play and it just gets them really down. We're like, yeah, this is gonna be a while. Or even if it's not, like, hey, you're gonna miss 3-4 games, then they're like, I only have 8 games left this year. And then letting the team down, letting your parents down, it's just really sad to me. Hearing all those things where it's like external factors of I'm letting other people down. It's always just that one hits me in the feels when I hear that. But that I get the anger too, because some people respond to that letdown through anger. So I'm glad they put that in there. But yeah, wanted to throw those out there.
The one that hit me was I didn't think it was serious, and like it doesn't happen very often where they don't think it's anything, and
Mm-hmm.
you be like, oh, it's a big one. It's not a nothing. And I've like had to prove it to a kid. I don't know if you guys have ever had to prove it to a kid. Like I had to prove an ACL tear to a kid and his coach. I felt really bad, but there was no convincing them. They're like, "No, he's fine." And it was an away team. They thought, which for whatever reason this opinion exists, I don't understand at all, but they thought I was the home team athletic trainer and I was just not letting their best player go back in. And I was like, that is not, I'm not that person. I know a single athletic trainer who is,
I
but
wonder if
that
they got an experience before.
yeah, and it was a big game. It mattered a lot, but it was a clear, I watched it, non-contact ACL. You watch it happen, you're like, "Oh crap." He went down, I did the test on the field, walked him off. He walked off on his own, but I walked off with him, got him on the table, did a Lockman's and a drawer to confirm, and I was like, "Yeah, you got to be done today." And he was like, "No, I'm fine." And the coach came over and kind of got in my face. And I was like, okay, you know what? Like, your risk of hurting it worse is not small, but go ahead and jog down, plant, and cut to your left. And he, as soon as he took 2 steps, he didn't even make it to the plant and cut. And he was like, oh, I can't do this. And I was like, I know, I'm really sorry. I didn't want to have to tell you, but you kind of forced my hand here, and here is what your injury is. And I felt real. And his coach was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. And I was like, no, I understand. Please don't get in my face. I was trying to break the news kindly, and you kind of put me on a spot where we had to do it the hard way.
I always tell the coaches, like, if they push back that much, I'm like, he's not effective. I don't care if you want him in there. Right. He's not going to be able to do anything.
Well, and that was
really want him out there.
Right. Let him show you what he can or cannot do right now. And I think sitting on the table was comfortable, and it didn't hurt. And that was the key that they didn't understand. I had to look at a track coach with this conversation once too, because as I put my thumb into the divot where his Achilles was supposed to be, the words came out of the coach's mouth, oh, well, it would hurt way worse if something was torn.
I was not there anymore.
And I looked up at him, and I was luckily, like, Mom was right there. Dad had just had an Achilles rupture, so Mom knew what the injury was. And I was like, well, your Achilles is ruptured, so torn isn't really the problem. And the kid knew, but it was one of those where you're like, again, coach's reaction, like, it would hurt way worse. No, not always.
Yeah.
Not always.
So one of the big things sorry, Ashley, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, there have been many times where I have to repeat and repeat and repeat that every single person is going to respond to the same injury in a different way. Just because they can't walk and it doesn't blow up like a balloon immediately, it doesn't mean there's not something serious going on. And yeah, I've even missed ACLs because they were like totally fine and they got up and they like ran off, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe they're actually good. And then weeks later, MRI confirmed, and I was like, dang.
Yeah, they can be sneaky sometimes. As obvious as they are, sometimes you have those kids who are like, I'm fine, but you have them jump and they collapse and then it starts swelling. You're like, okay, yeah, wasn't fine.
Yeah, but especially with coaches in the secondary school setting, we have many athletes that are on the tough side and they hide things really well, but just because their body is like, it just compensates. They're not in as much pain. And then we have the extreme opposite swing. And so sometimes it's really important for us to tell the coaches, like, hey, remember, not everyone is going to respond the same. Like, this is okay. But we need to still support this athlete.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit. I think a little bit further down. But there's one big part that you pulled out of the folder that I want to touch on, and it's the dominant behavior response to injury.
Yeah, it's just so all three of these phases, the main response they look for is they seek support from their whichever support system they have, family, friends, significant others, teammates, coaches. So this reaction to their injury, usually negative, right? It makes sense. They're sad, they're angry, they have everything going through their head about how the world is not the same anymore. Their plans for the future have all changed. And then as we move through the different next two sections, like they adjust, they reappraise their situation, and they go to a different feeling about it. But the main thing they still do is they seek social support from someone. So when we move into the next one, which is their reaction to rehab, which is usually where they're super frustrated all the time, that is where our population is the most needed. The athletic trainer, or in places where they don't have an athletic trainer, the sports medicine team that they might have, who can tell them this is how it's going to go, right? You can do rehab for each of these injuries forward and backwards. So you can tell them what comes next. Hey, once you can do this, you can do this. Once you can do this, you can do this. And so then they know what comes next, and it kind of eases that frustration a little bit, because like, imagine you don't know how to walk anymore. When they're relearning to walk, that is super frustrating because they've been walking their whole lives and now they don't know how to walk right. And so okay, but but you're gonna learn how to put your heel down and do a toe strike and do all these things. You're gonna learn that again, and it's gonna be fine. And some of them, again, they it takes 2 minutes for them to for their brain connections to resynapse, and then they can do it again. And that it's really exciting and fun, but it's leaning on that sports medicine professional to help them.
Yeah, the frustration part is big, and it's not going to be super obvious. They'll be frustrated, but it's not going to be super obvious when they're seeking support. And I think a lot of ATs, like we see this every day. Injuries are everyday occurrence for us, so we're used to giving like, hey, you're going to be out for this long. We're used to be like, all right, I'm going to see you a lot. This is new for that athlete usually, and that seeking support can come in a couple different ways, and I think it's easy to fall into that trap of, oh, this athlete's coming in every day and they're complaining to me and they're venting and they don't want to do the rehab and all that. That can be them seeking support from you. You might be the only person that they can talk to because they go home and they tell their parents and they're like, well, you know what? This is part of playing sports. You need to take care of it, rehab, like suck it up. They don't have anyone kind of just being like, hey, I'll listen. And that's not easy for us to do. We got a lot of people in our clinics, and it's hard to have somebody who's down all the time and to have us take that on. And to empathize, you have to meet them where they are to a certain extent, and that's emotionally difficult for us. It's not hard to do, but emotionally difficult to sustain, and to constantly be like, all right, I'm going to go down I'm going to meet you at your level emotionally where you're depressed, you're down. I'm going to really feel that. I'm going to relate with you, and I'm here with you in the trenches, and we're going to get better. That's tough to do. It wears on you, especially when you have a lot of kids, like if it's an ACL and you're like, hey, I get it. The last 3 months was really hard. I'm struggling right here with you. I'm not doing all the work, but it's an immense emotional toll on us. And I think it's easy for us to shy away from that as we get further in our career. And I think it's important to remind ourselves to keep on doing that. Ash, you were just pointing at me.
I think that comes with experience too, right? Like the more ACLs I've done, the more I've been able to go, oh, so here's what we're going to do next. Here's the positive outcome on that. Here's where we're going. Oh, remember you're sad today, but you did this last week and you couldn't do this last week. And you can take from each athlete you do the process with and go, oh yeah, they kind of get down a little bit in this section because they can't do X or they can't do whatever. And you go, okay, how did we, oh yeah, this person, okay, we'll change it. We'll say this. And that helps with that mental piece of like, you can kind of get ahead of yourself to not have to feel your feels all the time. Cause I'm not a feely person. I do get sad. I feel bad for them, but I'm not an emotive person. So I have to be like, okay, I'm not. I promise I do understand your feelings. I'm not going to cry with you, but I will feel it with you. But could you just be mad at me instead of making me cry? Because I handle that conversation a lot better. Like, let's be angry with Katie today, but like, let's not cry at Katie today, can we? Like, I'd rather have that. And usually that helps. And I have a swear jar. I do not, but there are days where we have to go, okay, today's a swearing day. Let me have it. Be mad at all the exercises, get it out. And then, but like that, it creates a more fun environment that way too. Cause then by the end of it, usually they're laughing and you kind of, then you can focus on where we've been and where we're going. And yes, this is a part of the process. And I always, even from once we get a confirmed diagnosis, I'm like, okay, week 6 through week 16 are the worst of it. Like week 0 to 6, you can make pretty good progress every day. Like, yes, it hurts, but like your progress is so high. But then you hit week 6 or 8 and it's kind of dull because you can't like, and you hit that social support where like people are like, well, you can do it, why can't you just do it? And they have to continue to explain that they can do it, but like they can't do it all the way. And they like, that's hard on them too, because their teammates, if you're doing it right, they're in practice and their teammates are seeing them able to do things, and they're like, well, why can't you just do this? And it's like, nope, because Katie says that my quad still shivers when I have to do that. And so it's just that piece of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And my key, the way I deal with a lot of that is distraction. It's like, it's just like training a puppy. You just have to distract them and make it positive. And so I like all day, every day, I feel like all I do is distract these athletes from their pain and suffering. And we give them the goals. We give them, hey, as soon as you can do this step down, then we can do this. And then as soon as they accomplish that, I celebrate hardcore. Like ridiculously. I was like, "Oh my god, you did it! Yes!" And I get so happy for them, and then that makes them happy. And then for these, the long-term rehabs, which are typically our ACLs that are around all the time. And I have 2 ACLs recovering right now, same surgery date. And so they are doing a lot of comparing themselves to each other.
Well,
And the one that is not doing as good, they are in my office quite frequently. So I've started to give them like student helper tasks almost. And I'm like, hey, you're done with your rehab? Hey, wait, could you go grab me an ice bag for this athlete? That'd be so helpful. And they do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. What would I do without you here? And I help make them feel super useful and super needed. And even if it's not in their sport, I think it really helps them. And then even when, like you were saying, like, hey, you just accomplished this, like you couldn't do that last week. And I really hammer home those things because when their peers do come down on them, like, why can't you do this? And that I've heard them snap back at, oh yeah, well I did a step down today, so ha, like
give them some wins.
exactly.
They just had a huge L that's gonna hang with them for however long. Give them some wins along the way. Make those short term goals. Don't make them weekly or bi-weekly. Make them every couple days.
Yes.
Like with those straight leg raise
Yeah.
athlete that we referenced a couple episodes before. Like, hey,
Yep.
you couldn't even lift your leg with the quad set, and now boom, you're
Right.
doing 20. Well, can you do 25 tomorrow? Well, how about 30 the next day? And give them those little goals. Give them some wins.
Yep.
Right. I'm real big on the milestone celebrations. We celebrate the milestones. Hey, you're off crutches now. Isn't that crazy? Hey, you walked down a stair by yourself today. Like you did a leg raise. You were able to jump for the first time. You were able to bike for 20 minutes and it didn't hurt. All of those little big milestones.
So there's going to be a couple different reactions. I want to touch on DAPTA right before we jump into her return to sport, because that's kind of the end of it. So remember, this is not a linear process. They can come in one day depressed, and then they can be angry the next day, or they're high schoolers. They can come in depressed, be angry 5 minutes later, and then be depressed 2 minutes later, and then I could be like, I'm okay with this, and then be angry like 30 seconds later. So understand that they're going to feel all the emotions. They're going to jump from one to the other without. So just remember that it's not a linear process. Be prepared for that. It's normal to have all those things go through your head. Another thing that I like to use that I want to throw out there real quick is outcome measures are your friend if you use them correctly. Now, when you're looking at, like, since we're on ACLs, it's a longer term, but there's other ones that are not just the IKDC. Using the outcome measures can be negative if you don't hit the athlete on what they mean. Because if you do it and it's got a 8.4 MCID and they score 4 points less than they did last time, like, I'm getting worse. I'm like, no, this just means you're roughly the same. It hasn't changed a lot on this outcome measure. It hasn't changed enough to show on there. And then if they jump by like 10 points, they're like, well, that's really good. I'm like, yeah, look, you're improving. Look, you said you couldn't, this was a 4 out of 10 last time, and now you're at a 2 out of 10 for pain. Like, you're getting better. Even though your overall score is not changing, this area is getting better. So you can use that to really fine tune and give them those wings in their everyday life that you're not seeing, and kind of help it frame overall. And then it's a really good management tool for their mental health aspect and their response, because where they're at mentally is going to affect their want to and their drive and their effort level for the injury, as well as on some sort of physiological level, which I think we might have one. Well, I guess the article that I referenced at the beginning of the show, that it can affect injury response, recovery, and subsequent sports performance. So being able to track where they're at is important. And if it's ACL, the ACLRSI is really good for figuring out where they're at mentally, and then not using it as you can't use it as an outcome measure tool, but using it more of okay, we're going to see where you're at today. Hey, you're a little more down. Let's talk about that a little bit. What's going on? I kind of use it as a check-in every week. The IPRRS is for non-ACL. It's injury, psychological readiness to return to sport. And you can do the same thing. Like, hey, okay, you're not as confident in this, but you were last week. What's going on? Or, hey, you're feeling a lot more confident. That's awesome. Tell me about it. Like, how's that changed? So use those as, don't wait until an issue comes up to address it. I guess what I'm getting at is use these to be proactive and see how are we feeling now? Where are we at mentally? Are we making progress? Are we going down a little bit compared to our last ones? That's super important. So, Ashley, I'm going to throw this one to you. There are tons of reactions to returning to sport. Not all of them are the, yay, I've made it, I'm going back in. That's actually, I don't see that a whole ton. I see a lot of the first one, which is like anxiety about getting back in. So walk us through a couple of the reactions to returning to sport.
I think a lot of what I see is the fear response of the, I am so scared to go out there and just get hurt again and re-injure it and not be good, etc. And so I try to focus on the breakdown of their movements. So for soccer players, they're, say we have a soccer player return from an ACL and they've passed all their rehab and they're doing great. And I break it down for them, and I'm like, look what you've been doing in the gym. Like, look at these box jumps you've been doing. That's awesome. Or the sprints. You've been running this kind of fast time. You've been doing all the cutting. Is that harder or easier than what you feel like you do at a practice? And they're usually say harder. And I was like, see, you're already doing the harder part and you're doing it great. So just put that out on the field and focus on slowly easing into things, etc. And so that's the most common response I deal with. And I just try to break it down into the smaller movements. But like, look, you can do this, which means you can do this. So you're doing great. So I try to keep it positive.
Yeah, I think getting them in front of their coaches so their coaches can have that positive reaction is huge.
Yes.
I like, usually basketball is easy because the gym's like right there, right? But getting them out and like, let me tell you how much of an athlete I am when I have a football player running routes and I'm throwing them the ball. Usually I have to find somebody to do that. Much better in a basketball gym. But I for sure have, like, one of my ACLs, I grabbed the pad from the closet and was like, all right, we're doing layups today. And she was just timid. She was so scared to have a defender on her because she was worried about planting and cutting again. Her first layup, I threw her across the gym. And it's the most fun you can have in rehab any day of the week. If you are struggling emotionally with dealing with your athlete, I highly recommend that they get to the point of doing layups and you can throw them. But it worked so well because I was like, is anyone going to hit you like that in a basketball game? And she was like, no. And I was like, cool, then we're good. You're fine.
And that's something I don't think they get in PT as much. Even when they go to sports PT, they're not in the basketball gym that they play in and practice it. So I think we're uniquely situated to be like, okay, as we're going through this, I love to use practice as part of my rehab if we're lucky enough to be in season. I'm lucky enough for them, but I'll have them go out to practice, but I already do these at 75%. And then, okay, how'd that feel? Cool. I'll have you do them at 85, 90% next time, and then add in these at 75%. So when they're getting that return to sport, they're kind of like chomping a bit like, all right, I've already been doing this. I know I can do it. Let's get going.
So I'm a big proponent of the return to participate and then return to competition so that they're cleared to be in practice, doing the full practice. And that's where that girl had made it to. She was cleared for full practice, but she wouldn't. Oh my God, she would not, if I was not standing in the gym, she would not participate in the drill. Like, that's where her anxiety was with it. Just, like, somehow my presence was going to save her. But so I had to get her into drills, and she just would not, unless she would walk through the plays without me, but otherwise she wanted me standing in the gym. And I was like, so it can't be. We've got all kinds of practices going on. I can't just stand in basketball practice all day. But so that was part of how I got her into it. I was like, well, no one's hitting you in this non-contact drill. So I hit you during that drill. So you can definitely do that one without me. And that's how we kind of progressed her back into drills. Like, one day the coach came and got me. He goes, I'm going to have to teach you the drill for you to participate, but I need you to, because I need her to do it. And I was like, cool. At some point, can I not I'm too old to be playing girls basketball anymore. At some point, can I please not do this again? Beginning stage is great. Live basketball, I'm not there anymore, you guys.
All right. Any final thoughts on section 2 before you head on to section 3, which is we've already kind of touched on a little bit, but more of coping and how us in the support system can help these athletes. Perfect. All right. So for section 3, we're going to go over how we as athletic trainers can help, how coaches and parents, we can help guide them. Because a lot of times they're not going to be as well equipped to handle these things. They're going to naturally do what they think is best. But one of the first things that we're going to go over is kind of the musculoskeletal injury stressor, and then some strategies that coaches and athletic trainers and parents can use to help kind of negate that and help guide the athlete through. Katie, is this taken from a research article, this table that you made, or is this all out of the brain of Katie Wallace?
This table is from, I wish. This table is from the Gilbert. It's the first citation, the Gilbert article.
Okay, so Gilbert et al. From 2015?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so that's titled Coping with the Stress of Athletic Injury, How Coaches Can Help. Kind of divvy this up. Katie, I'll give you the first shot at temporary physical restrictions. What are some strategies that coaches can utilize?
Yeah, big proponent of doing every part of practice that you're capable of doing. So whatever, if it's an ankle sprain, but you can still be shooting from, within 10 feet, then you better be shooting, right? Get your free throws shot, get your whatever other drills, I don't know, stand and dribble, right? Like there's always ball work that can be done, ball handling and shooting drills that can be done at basketball, whether or not your ankle is working. So I'm a big proponent of that. And then having them coach a part of practice, right? Or give them tasks that are teammate oriented tasks. You're going to lead stretching. Make sure that we get all of this done within this time frame. Make sure that you're doing X, Y, and Z. And then, okay, this person is next in line. Like if you were the starter, this is next man up. You got to tell them what to do. Tell them what you're seeing them do wrong so that they can correct it. Coach them on what you would do differently in that scenario. And so I think that's a big piece of it. We're not little league anymore. Kids aren't just not coming to practice when they're injured. Don't have them just sitting in the stands the whole time. Like there's no need. Yes, they're going to have to sit out the live play. We know that, but that shouldn't be your whole practice anyway.
Yeah, mental reps are huge. Have them think through what they would do and use. I'd like that you put in here mental imagery to help them rehearse that. I can't tell you how many times, like in my personal life, when I've been trying to be successful at something athletic, which is not often, like I imagine it, and then it like kind of helps train your muscles as to what to expect and what to do. And then when you do it in reality, you're like, oh, that wasn't as hard. So like even thinking through like a Euro step, you can like walk through it, but think through how it would feel to have a defender there. And then when you go to do it in real time, it's like, oh, that was a lot easier. So using those mental reps, I think is huge. And then you put a fun one in here, have that injured athlete observe and critique team performance. I think you touched on a little bit of having like feedback, but the critique is just hilarious because I could totally see some kids be like, you suck at that, do that better. Which again, keeps them in with the team and they're having fun. So they're not.
The amount that I've had players go, hey, you should make it when you shoot it.
My athletes always
advice. Thank you.
Every year my athletes be like, oh, it's basketball season. CJ's back. I'm like, what do you mean? You're like, every time you walk by and miss one, you're like, hey, so there's an orange rim up there. So when you shoot it, it helps if it goes in the rim. They're like, oh my God, here he is again. I say it every time. And then I'm like, hey, that was really good. Just do it better. And then I go to the coach, like, I'm going to take your job. So keeping them connected with the team is a huge part of the next point, which I'm going to have through your way, Ashley. It's feelings of isolation. What are some strategies to tackle that?
Kind of the same as just before. You have to keep them involved and keep them involved in team activities, whether it's team dinners or, leading the stretches of the team or giving them tasks that's actually involved with the team, like not just, hey, go organize our jerseys, like off in the corner. Like
Mm-hmm.
that maybe they can do that while they're doing drills that they can't participate in. But yeah, making sure they're involved with the actual team, and then also stressing to them, because just like we said before, that with the critiquing, you also have to keep it positive. And so one of the best videos I've seen lately is a coach that wouldn't let any of his athletes leave practice before they gave like 5 compliments to someone.
Mm.
So but they had to be constructive, or but it had to be positive, and it had to be a compliment, not like, hey, you missed that shot. Like, hey, you did super good on this jump. Next time, I think just try to jump a little bit higher and you'll get every single one, like stuff like that. So really hammering down that they have to stay positive, but making sure that they're truly involved. And this really involves the coach, right? Is because we can't force the coach to let them do these things. So the coach has to really be on board. And I know many of my coaches would be, and I know some of them are a little more old school and they don't. And so that part is really hard for this. And oftentimes I think that leads to the athlete forcing themselves into things and doing things too quickly and then getting kind of re-injured.
Ashley, I was going to add, with your old school coaches, some of them I've had who just look at me and they go, just tell me what to do. Because they just don't know.
Oh, I wish mine would say
Which
that.
seems counterintuitive. It seems like they should know. But 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 it was like, I don't know, kind of eye-opening to me when they walked in. They're like, I don't know how to do that. And I was like, oh. And so like we kind of like daily debriefed. I'm like, so here's how she's feeling today. And so he'd come in before practice and like, here's how she's feeling today. Can you adjust that? Right. And so it was kind of interesting because like we went to a point where I was like, okay, how do you think she's doing, when we were back into the practice area by this? And he's like, she looks better than she did last year. And I go, you need to tell her that. Those words have to come out of your mouth to her. It can't be me saying it. You say that. And he was like, oh. And I was like, yeah, because I a lot of times will pull last year's numbers, right? Like they do tryouts, they do a vertical jump, right? Oh, here's what your vertical jump was last year. You're above that now, rehab wise. Like you're beating last year. Like her mile time was faster than last year's mile time already, right? And I was like, look at you, right? But her play looked better to her coach too. And I was like, you have to say that, you know? And so like, just sometimes you got to tell them what to say. Today, you're going to tell her this or him this, you know?
I should try that. I don't think it'll work with my coaches, but I'm going to try that. Like, I
Worth
need
a
you to say
shot.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think sometimes with those older coaches or coaches who aren't as verbose or emotionally easy to read, kids will project what they think coaches will respond with. And I can't tell you how many times they're like, well, I can't do that because coach will be mad. I'm like, no, they won't. Just tell them. I'm like, they're awesome. They're super nice. And I've had one of the nicest coaches I've ever met, like just amazing person. And the kids are like, she'll be mad at me. I'm like, she's the nicest person. She's always talking about how she can help you. I'm like, you got that just hasn't clicked, or she hasn't articulated it well enough or something. But they get these like ideas of coach won't like that. So a lot of the times with those coaches, like, hey, I know you want to support with them and you're listening without judgment and they're going through the recovery process. I think they need to hear that that, because here's what they're projecting and here's what they're thinking. And they're like, what? Why would they think that? I'm like, I know. You didn't do anything to cause that, but that's what their perception is. So here's, I think, what we need to do to kind of push through that. And just like even something as simple as like acknowledging, hey, I know you're going through the recovery effort. Like you're doing a great job. Just keep us updated. Like we're looking forward to getting you back, but we know it's a process. You're doing awesome. Anything we can help with, we're there to support you. And just hearing that can break down that perception of what they think the coach is thinking, because adults are intimidating to kids. That's fact.
They are. And it is getting worse because I think the child to adult conversation doesn't happen nearly as much these days with social media and video games, and everything's done through our phones. The million reasons why our society's changing a bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've had to have many conversations with kids, and just teaching them the basics of the communication. Like, hey, if you're not going to show up to practice, if you're not going to do this, you can't just assume. You have to tell us. And I tell them to treat us like little kids. You have to tell us like you're telling a little kid, because we don't know what you're thinking and you don't know what we are thinking. And I stress upon them, I'm like, we are here for you. No high school coach is here because they get paid a lot of money. Okay. They're here because they love you and they love being around this.
That is such a good point.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them they're essentially volunteering.
They are.
Their gas might be getting covered for half of the season,
Yeah.
if even that. But that's a really good way to put it. And also understanding that coach has, if it's basketball, they've got 20 kids that they're thinking about. Doesn't mean they're not thinking about you, but if they're in practice, they're thinking about the 18 on the court and maybe not the 2 who are sitting out as much because it's practice time. So they might be distracted. So kind of reminding that coach, like, hey, just remind them that like they're still on your team. You're not mad that they got injured. You understand. I think it kind of lets the coaches know, like, oh, that's right. They can't read my mind. It's not a given that they think that I care. I need to like throw it in there every now and then. Like, hey, thinking about you. How you doing? And some coaches are really good at that. And some just aren't because they take it for granted.
For sure. And I've even had to walk a kid up to a coach and be like, hey, coach, can we have a quick meeting? And I'll be like, hey, little Johnny feels like, and I try to have that side of their conversation for them just to show them how it should go. And I know that the few times that I've had to do that, it really has helped. And then it taught the kid how you actually communicate with your coach. And so that has helped too.
Yeah, it's a good learning experience for them. A couple other things that Katie had in here that I want to throw out is encourage the parents from their end. They can have that conversation as well. This is not just a coach to parent or coach to kid conversation. Kids can have that conversation with the parents as well. Parents should bring their kid to all the sports related events, let them feel part of the team, attend games and practices, unless like they need to catch up on school. Then this is a really good time to do it. But they shouldn't be missing a lot. Like if they miss one practice or 2 practices in the first 2 days after, like that. I'm always like, yeah, catch up now. And then once you start getting more healthy, we're getting you rolling. The one that I'm kind of on is schedule rehab so that doesn't conflict with practice times. I'm a little iffy on that one. I understand the thought process of you want them to be associated with practice and all, but practices are usually 2.5 hours. If you add on rehab on top of that, that's now 3.5 hours, and that's taking up a lot of the kids' day extra that they weren't having before, and that can lead to increased stress. So if it works, awesome. If they're like, I don't want to be at home, I need something to do, sweet, do it. But also be cognizant of, they're now injured and they have an additional duty to do with rehab at home, and they have an additional duty to come in outside of practice, and they have to still go to practice. So you're starting to stack things.
You think it's how much practice they can participate in too. Like if they can't do any practice, they can do it during practice, or like they could do it while they're at practice, if they're just sitting on the side. But if there's things that like, I don't know, if they aren't doing a weights class and you need them, they're at the far end of the rehab, like you got to get your lifting in at some point. Like you can't do it during practice because you're doing practice during practice. We also have to manage your recovery time. Like, so sometimes I think it depends on what you're rehabbing, what body part are we working on? What's the severity? How far along are we? Things like that.
Yeah. So, how far along is a big one, I think.
Yeah. I think that point also aligns better with the collegiate athletes and not necessarily the secondary school.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Katie. So the next one is the rehab process. We have 2 more left. So one for each of you guys. What are some ways some coaches and parents can help the athlete manage? I mean, we're going to be helping them a ton through the rehab process, but from their side, how can they help?
Yeah, I think the goals are huge. It has SMART on here, and I am really bad at remembering what all of the SMART terms are.
Well, now
but
I know,
I knew you were. I know measurable is the M Ashley knows them. See, I know measurable and time. Those are the two I lean on the most when I look at it, because I hate having a goal and having no timeline on it. I hate having like it's specific. Oh, look at me. Okay, hold on. Specific,
measurable and time.
Adjustable,
accountable,
specific, measurable, adjustable,
accurate.
Adjustable.
Is it adjustable?
It's in the rehab terms, according to the articles you guys sent me, it's specific, measurable, adjustable, realistic but challenging, and time-based.
We're throwing out acronyms and none of us know what it is.
Well, I knew specific, and I knew measurable, and I knew time. And I think the other ones I just don't know because they're in there and
They're
that's
givens.
how I make my goals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. But I think having a set, like you know what the Howard Head polka dot sheet that you get, you know what I'm talking about? I love that sheet because it tells you what you can do each week. And so I think knowing that, like, oh, by week 8 to 12, you're going to be run walking or doing, you know, you're jogging, whatever. Okay, you should be able to do this by this time. What is it today? And I think it helps with rehab so much to have that measurable goal. Like, I want you to be able to jump an inch, whatever, something measurable at that time. And a coach can know that goal and help them meet it. Like, what is your strategy to get to that goal? Or what if you are in a group and you have two that are comparing themselves, which is not always the best. Sometimes it's very helpful, but it's like, okay, how did you figure out the mechanics to get your leg to lift, you know, and help your teammate get their leg to lift, because by the end of this week, I want you both to be able to do this efficiently, you know, things like that. And so I think coaches can really help with that. Teammates can really help with that. And then like daily goals, like some days the goal is just to find a positive attitude. Hey, what is one good thing about the situation you're in right now? And a lot of times I remind them, sometimes the best thing about being in rehab is you relearn how to do it more effectively, and like just that piece of it. So I think those SMART goals are great.
For the at-home side, I've had quite a few injured athletes where we're doing some rehab and I think we made some great progress one day and they come back a day or two later and they're like set back. And I was like, oh my gosh, did we do too much? What happened? So I'm asking them questions and I'm like, man, what did you do? I'm trying to figure out what happened. And they're like, oh yeah, well, I had to go to work last night. And I was like, oh, like a job or like, but so many of my athletes work with their parents' company or something, so they are working, you know, kind of under the table, but they go in out and they they help their parents at their work, and they are usually very labor intensive. So I've had to call some parents and be like, hey, like we did this and this and this today and I was really worried that I did something wrong or we did too much, but then I realized like they went to work and they did this and this and this, and I was like, that's really bad at this stage right now for their healing. I was wondering if there's anything else that they can do with that job that doesn't require that, so it's not re-injuring them. And I try to have that conversation with parents that they need to be doing less at home. Like, don't let them do these things and don't force them to do these things. Then I've had the athletes that are the swing where they do nothing at home but sit on the couch. They don't even have chores. And I'm like, hey, I need them to get up and move around more. So, like, can you make them like vacuum or sweep, something that gets them moving, but that's not like super labor intensive? Like, you know, and the parents are like, oh my gosh, yeah. I was like,
Can we have them stand on one leg and wash the dishes, please? They need their proprioception's trash.
Can they stand on one leg all the time?
Yeah. So I think that has been helpful when I have those conversations with parents, like, hey, we need to do this, or hey, can we stop doing this? And they generally respond pretty well.
I like to and I didn't think of this. One of my coaches did it and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get some other coaches to do that. It was one of his athletes was going through an ACL and we were talking about where she's at because he's just a really good dude and was like, hey, how's she doing? And I was like, oh yeah, we're working on this. Like we're working on controlling when we're jumping and all that stuff. And you know, she's doing awesome. And so he stopped by to grab like some equipment out of the cage, which was right next to my ATF. And she was in there and I don't think he saw her do anything, but he came in with everything like, look at you jumping. Like, that's awesome. And then he started like giving her like external perturbations and like pushing her. I was like, look at you stabilizing. And he just like built her up. And then she was like turning red in the face, getting embarrassed, but you could tell it was kind of like, oh, coach sees that I'm improving, that I'm getting there. Like, and it made her feel part of the team too. And just like, oh, he noticed, even though he wasn't there, he noticed as he was walking by, like, I'm not just forgotten in this room, which I thought was really cool. So I've kind of gotten coaches to be like, hey, we're working on straight leg raises today. Like, can you come in and get some ice for your water bottle and something? And they just be like, look at you raising your leg. Like, that's awesome. You're doing great. And just give them that confirmation that they are seen and that they acknowledge that healing process. And I think that helps a lot from the coach's end to build up the kids. All right. Last one. Ashley, I think we're going to you on this one. What are some strategies for addressing anxiety about pain and re-injuring?
Keeping the positive talk is so important. Positive self talk, even if you have to teach them what positive self talk is, and helping them with imagery and imagining how that they're going through these things and they're doing fine. Um, I couldn't quote a specific article, but I know I've heard in lectures, doing continuing education, that the positive self talk and going through the imagery of doing emotion actually helps those brain, those neuron connections, and can be almost just as effective as the physical side of rehab. And so if I see an athlete really struggling with something like that, I do try to talk them through it and I teach them how to do that guided imagery. And I always go back to when I cover youth gymnastics tournaments. I've been fascinated that I see these really young girls and they're sitting on the ground in this perfect posture and their eyes are closed and they're going through their upper body
Mm-hmm.
and they're going through kind of the motions of their routine. Usually it's like the floor routine or the beam or something, and they go through it all just sitting on the ground with their legs out straight, and they like walk themselves through the entire routine. And so I kind of try to explain that to the athletes, and I think that has been super helpful. And then they start to kind of do that on their own, and they laying in bed at night sit there and imagine yourself doing this, and I think that the imagery and the self-talk really helps.
Yeah, it's super important. I love that you put that in there because we see that all the time, especially with gymnastics and winter sports with skiing and snowboarding. You see them at the top of the hill going through when they're going to do where are they up to 1660 quad corks or something stupid like that, like going through and be like, all right, when I flip over 5 times and do 5 turns, then I'm going to come out of it. I don't know how they track that in their head because I can't track it on TV, but it works, right? Like they can feel what they're going to be feeling when they're in the moment, and then they can like turn that into reality. And the same is true about this anxiety, about pain and re-injury. You can feel how you're feeling, but then imagine like, okay, this is what it'd feel like if I didn't have this. And you can imagine it and picture it and make that perception a reality or make that feeling a reality. There's a reason the fake it till you make it is like not a great saying, but it's an accurate saying. Like it's going to become a reality if you like put it out there enough, because you're going to learn how to handle it and become more comfortable. So I think that's huge with the anxiety. I do have an article for you, Ashley, to throw into there. So it's Adern et al. From 2013. So a little bit outside of that 10, well, where I'm at, where it's still to 2025 right now. So as of the time of recording, it is just within like close to that 10-year. So positive psychological responses, including motivation, confidence, and low fear, were associated with greater likelihood of returning to the pre-injury level of participation and returning to sport more quickly. But they noted that fear was a prominent emotional response at the time of returning to sport, despite the fact that overall emotions became more positive as recovery and rehabilitation progressed. So getting them to kind of replace that fear, even though everything else is getting more confident, replace that fear, get them to be motivated, and they're going to have an associated greater likelihood of returning to their pre-injury level when they return to sport. So getting all that, I feel like that pain and anxiety about re-injury is the fear. Like that, I mean, I've had some kids just worry like, is it worth it? Do I want to go through all this again just to be able to play like soccer? Is it worth playing soccer and then risking having to go through like 10 more months of rehab? Like that's a very good point. Like I can't tell you how many sports I've stopped because I'm like, I'm getting older. Is this really worth it with the risks? But if they're having that like, oh, I'm scared that's going to happen again, but I really want to play. That's where that fear comes in. It's like, okay, well, let's talk through that. And those are some really good skills to go through. Yep.
Yeah, I think with some of the positive self-talk, every person is different in the way they like to do it, but I try to give them a few options, whether it's journaling, and journaling can be either written down if kids these days actually like to write with pen and pencil, or just typing out notes in their phone, just something and writing it down and putting a sticky note on the mirror of something positive, words of affirmation, stuff like that. Give them many options and hopefully they pick one and do it.
Yeah, find one they like.
Yeah.
So, Awesome. I think that pretty much wraps up section 3. We have some recommendations for places you can go. I think if you're in, I think ours are pretty much like in the Denver area. If you need a recommendation of places that we've referred kids to or anything like that, feel free to shoot us an email. We're happy to kind of collaborate with that. We have a couple in the area that are specific for like sports counseling, behavioral specialists. I know my employer has like for the larger injuries, they have like ACL nights. And so there's always kind of things that make a community. So please reach out. We're happy to share those with you as needed. But any final thoughts on reaction to injury before we get out of here?
Oh, I have one last one. Oh, so does Ashley. Mine is we don't have bad legs. It's not a bad side. I don't have a good one and a bad one. So like when as soon as we start the process, it's either surgery knee or non-surgery knee. And if they start calling it the bad one, then I make them call it the good one and refer to the other one as the bad one, because we're going to make this one better than the other one as part of our rehab process. But that's, I think, it does something to their brains. So it's no longer your bad knee. Stop treating it like it's your bad knee. That is your fixed knee. And we're going to go from there. So I think that's the key piece of it when you're talking through rehab. Like, you don't have a bad side, you have a better side, but you have equal, and they should be equal by the time you finish rehab. So we're fixing it where it's the fixed one or the surgical one. However, and usually I get to a point where I'm like, remind me which one we're treating again, so that they keep having to tell you, oh, this or that, so that we know which side we're working on, and we're always working both sides to strengthen the whole time. So
as held them all the time, like this one's going to be stronger by the end. So we're going to have to give a little loving to your unaffected leg to just make sure it's up to speed and like, oh, it's going to be stronger. Cool.
Yeah. For anyone listening to this, whether you're a coach, a parent, or maybe just a friend of an injured person, you've heard a lot of what not to do's in this little podcast. So just try to keep those in mind. Try to keep the positive self-talk. Try to be encouraging and rewarding. And we have a lot of propensity in our society to kind of joke around or make fun of. And if you see someone struggling, I just say, please try so hard not to do that and just keep things light and happy.
I like that. Yeah. Always be able to turn and like turn it serious if you need to. And like, all right, I'm putting this aside. And I find that kids respond to that a lot because they see us joke around a lot. And when we have that moment of, hey, done joking, what's going on? Talk to me. It like hits them differently. So I think that's really, really good advice for both you guys. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. That is a wrap on today's episode. So if you enjoyed the conversation, please hit subscribe, share the show with a friend or a colleague or an athlete or a parent or whoever you think might benefit from it, and drop us some feedback. That really helps us improve each episode, figure out what we need to work on to make it more effective for you guys. So please don't hesitate to shoot us an email. We've got new episodes coming out every other Friday, so be sure to check back soon. And for Ashley and Katie, I've been CJ, and thank you so much for listening. Until next time, see ya.